Welcome to Translation Confidential. This is episode 148, AI for AI's sake, and the problem that nobody's solving. This is going to be a fun episode. I think it's, one of our soapbox episodes, but, the main point, Patrick, that I'd love to discuss today is really about how I think people are missing the point on AI. We're going to talk a little bit about the LinkedIn echo chamber. I think if you follow a lot of people, and I don't know how it is in other industries, so my viewpoint is always through the lens of a translation service provider who's connected to a gajillion people in our industry. And I really do feel like it's an echo chamber right now. And over the weekend, there was one IBM ad that led me to go find another IBM ad, but they're both hilarious and not something we've done on the podcast before. But I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to play these ads because I think it will resonate with everybody and kind of frame the conversation. So let's just jump right into that.
We all know the key to successful AI pilots is
making them work.
It's not making them work for all your departments.
What?
It's not connecting them to existing tech. No, it's investment. Keep spending. At some point, AI is going to help you spend. Keep spending.
What's up?
Hey, that's crazy. We work with IBM. We're scaling AI as we speak.
Right, that makes sense.
Unsubscribe, yeah?
Let's create smarter business. IBM.
Okay, I love that. Hey, unsubscribe, yeah? I love that. Love that. All right, here's the next one.
We transformed customer service with AI.
The key is getting all your data together.
You just got to move it from everywhere.
From everywhere, you got to get all
Customer cloud.
Customer cloud.
Different vendors.
30-year-old records.
The ones in Japan.
The key is getting all your data.
Move it from everywhere. It takes about 18 months.
Probably longer.
What is time?
What's time?
18 months? No, we have IBM. Our AI is using our data right now.
Right.
We didn't have to move any of it. You gotta stop talking to your friends about AI.
I do.
Let's create smarter business. IBM.
All right, I love it. So the part there, right? Obviously, you got to stop talking to your friends about AI. I love that. You know what? I mean, people used to talk about bourbon and stuff like that. Maybe we should go back to that at cocktail parties and not talking about AI. But for me, I mean, obviously there's irony, right? The irony there is that, IBM, obviously one of the largest tech companies in the world, is like, hey, maybe you should stop talking about AI. Now, of course, the point for them is that, well, you talk to IBM and we've got it. But I really like is that it's that obsession, that over focus. Like if you're in LinkedIn now in the translation space, it's all about AI. And again, that's why I'm saying it's AI for AI's sake. I still think, those of us that started translation service businesses, or again, every industry is, right? You did it to solve your client's issues, and your belief in your heart was that you could do it better than other people, right? So your focus should be on your clients, your staff, and the problems they need fixed, right? I mean, that's the whole thesis for this episode, Patrick.
Yeah, and I mean, not even to mention, I feel like half the posts I see on LinkedIn, smack me over the head that they were written by AI.
Oh, yes.
I know, like, the running joke is that the EM dash is like your giveaway of AI, which, like, sure, whatever, but the model's trained on something, so it thinks that good writing uses the EM dash, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down. But I think the other big tells that I always see are like, it's not this, it's that. And it's like, that is 100% a ChatGPT reply.
Yeah. Call,
like,
response.
Yeah, and
Call,
then
response.
like 4 headers with 3 bullets each underneath them, like telltale AI that post was like written by AI. So again, like AI for AI's sake, like I think a lot of people and companies are putting just like, for lack of a better term, a lot of AI slop out there of just like, to me, it's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so far, it's not much.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. So let's start there. Let's start with the LinkedIn echo chamber. And I think the problem with the conversation right now is, you scroll through LinkedIn on any given day and you're going to see the same pattern. Somebody shares the latest complex and convoluted AI solution. Look at me. Look at what I created. And to me, it would be far more impressive if you talked about a problem you solved. Because the issues that I see, the use cases that I see, aren't framed by a customer problem. They lead with the technology first, like, hey, I connected this system to this system and that system to this system and this system to that system. Well, that's amazing.
Why?
Did that solve a problem for somebody? Well, and here's the honest truth of it. You know, I'm not seeing that client focus, or I'm not seeing that problem. And most of these things as well, which, you know, we'll get into a little bit. We'll talk about quality estimation, but, you know, I love the AI checking the AI that checks the AI, right? And here's the scary part about it is that, you know, 100 people will repost it. Hey, this is amazing. This is great. But nobody asks the question, what problem are you solving? Do you actually have a customer that asked you to do this? Because, and I don't know, maybe this is just isolated to us. I haven't had one customer approach us and say, hey, I need you to put in a translation solution for us that leverages AI, uses quality estimation, and delivers the translation back to me in nanoseconds. We haven't had one customer, one. And I will tell you, we have plenty of Fortune 500 clients. You know, you will hear people echo this. Well, that must be because you don't have enterprise clients. No, actually we do. So the point behind it is that I think people are just trying to show their AI chops. And I think it's ridiculous. But what I want to make sure is that, you know, I think for those of you that know us and have listened to the podcast and know our group, you know, we are not AI resistant by any mean. I just want to make sure that there's a customer case for it. It's, you know, I think there is a race inside of the translation industry for all of us to embrace this in some way. But again, I'm going to stress, start with the problem. If somebody tells you that they need an AI strategy, ask them what problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah, I mean, like going back to, I think, how language service companies were born, it's like you could have, you know, 14 translators work on one project, like writer, editor, proofreader. Like you could do that, but like, why would you? Like, it doesn't make any sense to have that many people on it. Like, you need a core group who's actually going to solve the problem that the customer needs, and in a timely fashion, right? Like we've talked about the triple constraints of timeline, budget, and quality, like all the time. And again, like AI, I think, helps with the timeline portion of things, like tremendously. Like things happen much, much faster with AI. But again, like if it's happening faster, is it better? And like, is it solving that problem that the customer is facing? Like those are, again, are questions I don't think people are asking enough.
Absolutely, Patrick. Again, and that's the risk when you don't start with the problem, right? Because it's easy when you start with the problem, you understand what the solution, you know, you understand what the byproduct is, right? Is you okay, here's my solution and here's the deliverable, and you can test, is the deliverable worthy, right? If you're just, again, using AI for AI's sake, just look how quick, because I get it. Like I love technology, right? So nothing gets me more excited. I was like, wow, look at this thing we put together. That's fun. But if it's just fun and you're not solving a problem, well, it's sort of useless, right? So that's why I think the next segment, you know, starting with the problem first and working backward makes the most sense, which is funny, right? Like this is a new strategy. Hey, you should always start with the problem and work backward. Because I like your point, Patrick, in the sense that, you know, AI and predecessor neural machine translation and machine translation before that, all of it really is, or a human translator. It's just a tool that's part of a workflow. So don't be enamored by the fact that it's, you know, it's completely a robot overlord, right? I mean, you shouldn't be overly enamored.
The tool should make your workflow easier, not govern your workflow.
Absolutely. And we've seen plenty of that as well. Well, you know, the system's going to require we do it this way. Again, who cares what the system requires?
Then it's a bad system.
100%. 100%. It has to start with the problem. So, you know, the core thesis of our episode basically is that, you know, every meaningful technology adoption in history started with a pain point, right? So your customer comes to you and says, well, geez, I have this content. It needs to be translated within 48 hours. It has to be perfect or as close to perfect as possible. Start with that. Right? So I love the example that nobody said, hey, let's find a use for electricity. No. I said, hey, it's dark. It's dark and we need light.
It's dark for half of the time that we're out here.
Exactly. So you shouldn't be saying we really need to find a use for AI. We need to, and that's essentially when you say we need an AI strategy. Well, why? Why do you need an AI strategy? So, I mean, we do have a couple of use cases, Patrick, that I wanted to walk through, and I think we're just releasing a new solution for IEP translation. I mean, it's a big problem for school districts, right? They're legally required. For those of you who don't know, it's an individual education plan. And what it basically is if a student has some form of impediment to their learning, some sort of obstacle to their learning, the school has to put a plan in place for how they're going to address it. And these documents they can be rather lengthy. So, very expensive. And the problem is that all of the providers that create these documents, in other words, these systems that help you manage it, and there is a lot of legal boilerplate, and they help you manage that state by state. Amazing service, really good. But I get it. They have intellectual property. So they lock up their PDFs. The PDFs are uneditable, if you will, because it's their IP. I get it. It's their intellectual property and they don't want you to break it. But what that doesn't help is the families that need translation. And again, there's a handful of states that require it, and they require you not to use machine translation as well. There's a bunch of other states that say it's okay, but you have to have a human review. So it's interesting. Some of them are actually getting into the weeds of translation process. But the big piece there is that a lot of budget was going to breaking that PDF and creating a workable Word document so that translation management system tools could be used. So this is a really good case for AI. Can we use artificial intelligence to break down the document and create a simpler format, translate it, and then save all of that budget, but then also have the ability to use either, in our case, a neural machine translation engine that's trained to handle that content, and then a human in the loop, or for some school districts that don't have the money and their state doesn't prohibit them from using machine translation, to use machine translation. We always say if people are doing that, they should also provide an interpreter, so that way, if that requires clarification, that, and that could still be a lesser expensive way of handling it, right? But again, what did we start with? The problem. There's a teacher, a student, and a set of parents that need to communicate about something that's pretty complex and pretty darn important. How do we reduce that budget and reduce that timeline? So that's essentially what we solved.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And I think you hit on a key point too of having someone in the room, like an interpreter who can communicate between those two parties of the parent and student and the teacher is super important. I think I saw a LinkedIn post from someone recently where they're like, oh yeah, I did like a teacher conference, like a parent teacher conference. And they're like, oh, they had to read through the report, and they're like, they weren't understanding the words that were translated. Like, yes, it was translated correctly, but like the interpreter like acted out what the words were saying, and the parents were like, oh, that's what you're talking about. Like, it was a very simple thing, but like having someone there who understands both languages and is able to, no matter how, still communicate with both parties was like, they had that light bulb moment, like, oh, now I know what you're talking about. Like, continue on.
Absolutely. It's key, right? Again, it's about getting the job done and using whatever means possible you can do it. And I think, again, that's the key. Is like, here's another example, right? There's a manufacturer launches in 3 new markets and has very little budget for full human translation of all their technical documentation. Well, at least if you have a trained engine in the subject matter, you can attack this with some level of some level of certainty that the translation will be better than just straight AI translation, right? Because it's all about inference. So if you have, a trained engine to do that, and then you put a human in the loop to do review, you can maximize that client's budget. And that's a very real world way to solve this. We did this recently for a client. It's a real problem. You've got, and of course, with all the economic tumult and political instability around the world right now, the global economy is kind of in a weird spot in terms of trade, but it's just another challenge that comes into play. So companies that are looking to do more business abroad have this issue, and maybe it's not something they were looking to do this year, so it wasn't in their budget. So again, as a translation service provider, it is our responsibility. And Patrick, I know we've covered this 1,000 times on the podcast about communication. And I think that is the important part of this, is that the customer and the translation service provider have to have the comfort to be completely transparent with one another about what's going on. Because when I realize that people think that's a sales technique to talk about budget, but it is one of the most important topics you can cover in discovery with a new client. Because you need to understand, it's like, what kind of money do you have to dedicate to this issue? Because I want to work backward from your budget.
Yeah, and I think like any good provider of really any services will obviously listen to what the prospect is saying, but I think any good provider will also say, okay, here's what I heard from you. Have you thought about these 5 other things that I thought of as I was hearing what you were saying? So for example, like I work at a marketing agency, and something I wish more clients knew is like, sure, you can hire us for a rebrand. We can rewrite your messaging. We can redo your logo. We can give you new colors. The price you pay for a rebrand to a marketing agency is probably about 5% of the cost of actually doing a rebrand. You need to print new things. You might need to paint your office. You got to get new signs for your office if you change the logo. Like it literally changes everything.
Everything.
So like if you're like, oh, this rebrand is only going to cost me, just the money I'm dedicating to the agency, like that is wildly wrong, like by a factor of 10. Like you have to redo everything. And then you need to invest the time to train your staff, creative and otherwise, like, here's our new brand. Here's how we're going to use it. Here's how it's different from the old one. And those are hundreds, if not thousands of hours that you need to dedicate to making that rebrand successful. And it's like, if we don't tell our prospects that in the sales process, like we're doing them a disservice.
Yeah, it's
like,
irresponsible.
It's right. Like, hey, this is, like, sure, great. Like we're done once we hand off logo files. It's like, no. Like you have a lot more work to do once our part in this process is done.
Oh my gosh. And and historically, just from having done it a few times ourselves, and we're a small organization, right? You keep finding your logo everywhere. It's like, oh, damn, we forgot about that. Oh God. All right. Something else to do. But again, it's the same, whether it's translation, whether it's marketing projects or PR projects. You really have to start with the problem and work backwards and say, can AI help solve this issue? Mm-hmm. Does it have some role in it? Doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, if it does, great. I mean, and sometimes it's even like support stuff, right? So one other use case that I can give you is we just had a client this week come to us, and they didn't have a good UI file. Patrick, you know how that goes sometimes. Is like, and why is that important? The UI being user interface. So we're translating a manual that refers to a software product. We refer to the user interface, the UI. It's all the little strings. So, like the commands that you see in the software when you're using it, either in a web-based application or phone.
Think about when you click the file button in Word, all those options that pop down. Like somebody that is UI.
Yep. Somebody has to translate all that stuff. So they didn't have it, but they said, well, we have our entire representation of our software in screenshots. And I have all those screenshots for all the languages. And by the way, we also want those screenshots to be in the manuals. Okay, interesting. So I used Claude Cowork to say, all right, I have all these screenshots. They're in folders and they're named appropriately with, a ISO code afterwards for what the language is. Can you recognize the content and create a spreadsheet for me with English as the first column and all of the languages after that?
Yep.
About 20 minutes later, I had an amazing spreadsheet with all of the strings properly organized so we could use it as glossary
and
and a term base.
that used to require someone sitting there and typing it out and trying to type in different languages.
Yeah. And I, in co-work, I said, I need you to run a quality pass to make sure that this all matches and there's no spelling issues. And guess what? It discovered that there was one image in the Spanish, which was actually Portuguese. And I hadn't done a proofreading pass on it yet, hadn't passed it off to the project manager yet. I was just, trying to help like I always do. And co-work discovered it for me. So we were able to go back to the client and say, hey, that looks like the screenshot's not the correct one. Oh my goodness, you're right. Here's the real one.
And I mean, how many screenshots were there to have to do that alignment? Like how long would that have taken for you to find that needle in the haystack of like, oh, I have to go through individual language folders and verify that that's the right language?
Yeah, something like 30 screenshots in 10 languages. So that's 300 screenshots. So it's a lot. So it was a huge saving. Now, again, it's a great use of AI. Doesn't necessarily mean we're even using AI in the translation, but we're using it as helping us to prep. So, all right. So what AI for AI's sake looks like in translation, right? So I think we talked a little bit about it, right? There's people that are out there just buying expensive solutions. There's a lot of like anything when there's new technology and there's a lot to learn, there's always going to be vendors that push into the market to try to take advantage of that ignorance. I know that sounds cynical, but it's true. And, there's people out there selling expensive NMT engines. There's, people saying, hey, here's, this great AI quality estimation tool. And, you go out and buy that and you haven't even figured out like what your QA process is. So you don't even really know like how you want to measure the process, but you start buying the tools first. And again, that's always an example of never lead with the tools discussion first, lead with the problem, right? Or there's folks out there that, are paying agencies thousands of dollars to build some sort of custom model when literally if you do the research, you can build it yourself. Like we've been building we are not AI experts. I don't pose ourselves to be AI experts.
If you have a translation memory, you're halfway there already.
Yeah. And there's other solutions too, right? Like sometimes people want to go to the sexiest ones. Well, let's use Claude and let's do this and let's do that. Let's not forget about Azure and neural machine translation. It still has a place. Which still has been around
for 30 years at this point now.
It obviously works better than it did, but it's pretty much the same tool. And that's where if you have a massive translation memory database, you train an Azure engine. Well, I know blue scores are probably not sexy to talk about anymore, but you can really elevate the quality, which is measured in this blue score, which is supposed to measure the deviation between what a human would do and what the engine would do. Higher the score, obviously, the better the quality of the translation. And, that's a perfectly solid solution for folks, right? So I think that thirst to chase the newest and the latest and the greatest model release, and it's like, oh, well, XYZ Corp they just built this whole thing. Well, we better go build this whole thing. And again, I would challenge you, right? The common thread in all of this is people are leading with the tool instead of the need. So I would challenge you. If your clients aren't asking you, focus somewhere else.
It's the trying to put the square peg in the round hole analogy there.
Yeah. You should really solve for how, instead of how do we use AI, instead of like what's broken and how do we fix it? Like that's what you want to focus on. And if AI can help you in any of those things, great. That sounds perfect. So, all right. So for our next segment, we wanted to jump into, what problem first AI looks like. We talked a little bit about, that AI engine that we developed for education, which is basically we had to build an engine from translations we've done in the past with redacting personal information. Mm-hmm. And it's a great Azure engine and it does really good work and there's no reason not to lead with it. So you can build an integration pretty quickly with off the shelf type tools. And that's a quick win, right? That's a quick win that doesn't cost you a lot of time or money. Most of us have Microsoft products. Easy to get an Azure Cognitive Services. I think that's what it's still called, Azure Cognitive Services service added to your account. It's pretty easy, actually.
Right, but I think what you mentioned is you started with the problem, which for a lot of school districts is we don't have the money to do what we need or are legally required to do. So like, how can we still do enough or enough to meet the legal requirements? Because like we have to do this, but like we simply don't have the budget to do it how it might have been done before.
And that's exactly what happened in the state of Illinois. I mean, it was good legislation in my mind. I'm all for language access, obviously, and it was that the school districts need to create translation that is not generated from people just like to say Google, like that's the only. Can't use Google Translate. Okay, well
they're the easy target on that one.
Yeah, they're the easy target. You can't use that. If you do, you have to have a human to review it, which it's phrased a little bit differently. It's there has to be I think they called it professional translation oversight or professional translator oversight. But that's the problem, right? So that edict comes down or that law comes down. And you're right. How do they find the budget for that? So it has to be, that's where a translation services provider can work backwards from the problem, because we have had exactly that same conversation with school districts. Hey, I think I'm going to need to translate about 30 or 40 IEPs this year. But I have the budget for doing like 3 with humans, full human workflow. How do we get there? Well, with some elbow grease. So, and that's really where our translation integrations solution came along as well. We recently, speaking of rebranding, we recently rebranded this. It was our CMS Connect solution to now just translation integrations, because we've developed workflows for more than content management systems. So it seemed a little odd to just focus on CMS or content management systems. But the trick there, right? The problem is, and Patrick's, I know we've told this story, but Patrick's got a good one. I think it was your client that did this. Copying, pasting is the enemy. And let me check again. Yes, it's 2026. Nobody should be copying and pasting translation. It just isn't the right thing to do. And Patrick had a client that had 2 versions of Chinese. It was traditional Chinese and simplified Chinese. And tough to tell the difference unless you speak the language, right? Unless you can read the characters. And whoever was doing the cutting and pasting, obviously put the project down and then came back to it, put the project down and came back to it. So they mixed the languages.
It's about half and half.
And what was the solution, Patrick?
Don't do that.
Yeah. Or start over. I had to do it again.
Yeah. Delete everything.
That looks like you're going to have to start over. And what a waste of time. So that was where translation integrations came in, is that, hey, if we can get the content right from the system and we can translate it and give it back to you so you can just import it. Of course, the integration part comes in where we're just pushing and pulling. And, that's the way to do it. And then, of course, when you solve that problem, this data exchange problem, start with the data exchange problem. Well, then it's easy. Then you can layer on different layers of AI or NMT or human involvement. You can have that discussion, again, working backward from the problem, which might be the budget or the timing, because it's not always just budget. Sometimes clients are like, yeah, I have this whole website, and the Bill 96 in Canada. We had a couple clients last year. They're like, yeah, we're way out of compliance, and that due date's like in 3 weeks. What do we do? So, okay, let's get going. So sometimes it's not even the budget, but it's the timing that you need to shave time off the time.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, thinking back to some of the CMS or other integration workflows, like you can turn them on full auto, but I think we put in intentional stop points where it made sense to make sure like stuff wouldn't break. So while it was like automation or AI or whatever we want to call it, it wasn't fully, because like that opens up so many more risks, and it wasn't just like press a button and everything again in nanoseconds comes back. We put in like intentional points of friction in the process, and good friction to make sure that like the quality didn't suffer because of automation.
Absolutely, Patrick. You know, and I think I almost forgot about the other topic as part of this, which was AI powered quality estimation. Like this is a topic that everybody wants to. Sorry for the quick pivot, but everybody wants to talk about this. And again, just like, hey, what's the coolest tool, or what should I use? And there's, by the way, if you leave this, you know, with your devs, you know, there's a lot of cool tools out there that are behind the scenes that you can use, and you can even layer them. But the ones that I like, you know, are Taos and our friends in my brother's hometown in Bologna, Italy, LanguageCheck.ai. And they are essentially tools that will score your translation that then give you some idea of, hey, can I eliminate some content from the translation project, right? It's like, what, and by the way, you don't have to necessarily use it just with AI translation. You could attach quality estimation to human translation workflows as well, which is a very cool tool, because people don't talk about that. It's like, they always want to talk about the quality of AI translation, but we should be talking about
what was your quality before AI?
Right. And we used to do it always with humans, right? It's like, all right, the full TEP process was translation, full editing, and then even a proofreader with 3 different stops there. If you can use AI for part of that, but you know, these tools aren't all created alike, and it depends on the subject matter. It depends on the languages. You know, if you get into languages of limited diffusion, you start to say, well, the quality of the machine translation isn't as good. And of course, the quality or the ability to measure quality isn't as strong in those languages either when you're using quality estimation tools. And in some languages, they're just not available. Like there's just not enough, and it's not available. So these are all like part of the nuance. So again, when it comes to quality estimation, same thing. I would start with the problem and work backwards.
Yeah, and I do really like it's called quality estimation. I think we've talked numerous times too, like language is subjective, and there's multiple ways to say the same thing. So I really like that these fall under the umbrella of quality estimation, not like quality scores, I guess would be like a worse way of saying that to me. Because again, like it's not as simple as like 1 + 1 = 2. Like there could be many different ways to go about it. And it's not a hard science. Like language is not a hard science. It's very much art.
Well, and absolutely, you know, a good case in point, we have a retail client who translates a lot of content for their associates, for their employees that are on the front lines in stores. And the Spanish that they use is, we would say, of a lower register, right? It's trying to meet the needs of, you know, where the education level is of their associates. And that is, that makes sense. But as such, if you run a pure quality estimation tool against it, it's
probably not going to look great.
No, it's going to be a lot of errors, but that's because, again, they're starting with the problem, right? The problem is trying to communicate in the best way possible to their audience. And that's so you can get on your quality estimation high horse and say, yes, but it isn't grammatically correct Spanish. Well, that's not the problem.
But the people consuming that will understand what it means, which is the important part.
Exactly. So, you know, that's another thing is you have to, again, consider the issue. So the next one I want to talk about a little bit, Patrick, is this transparency problem. So, you know, as part of this, what we're discovering is you know, again, because I used to be a translation buyer before starting this agency, I've always been very sensitive to how transparent we are in exactly what we're doing, right? And this transparency problem has shifted over the years. When we first started, it was, you know, about how many humans. Like people would say, oh, we use a full TEP process, but they're like, no. I mean, I've heard agency owners say exactly this thing. My translators are so good, they don't need proofreaders. Really? Okay, then I guess all these like world-class authors that have proofreaders, they're just not good. Is that what we're talking about?
Publishers are all wrong.
Exactly. I mean, typos happen, They do, and sometimes misunderstanding of the source, or, in the heat of the moment when someone's translating, they might, just blow by something. And proofreading in whatever form it is very important. And that was the problem. Today, the problem is that there are people that are building these complex systems and, selling a system like that and saying, oh, yeah, our translators take care of this. And it never sees a human. And that is a travesty and something that discredits all of us as translation service providers. And, the ISO 18587 exists for a reason, right? It's the international standard specifically for post-editing of machine translation output. And it has very specific requirements for the process of full human post-editing of MT output and the competencies of those post-editors. And it's intended to be used by translation service providers like us, clients and post-editors. And the key word there is clients. The standard was built around the idea that when MT is part of your workflow, everybody knows about it. And here's the critical distinction that a lot of people either don't understand or they just choose to ignore. ISO 17100, which we also have, governs human translation services. And if you're marketing a service as ISO 17100 compliant, the translation must be performed by a qualified human translator and revised by a second qualified person. Using machine translation without disclosing it and claiming that this is ISO 17100 compliant, it's not appropriate and you will not survive an audit. So if you're using MT, you need to be operating under ISO 18587. Simple as that. And that's really how it works. And if you're not, shame on you. And the standard is being updated now, obviously, to meet the need here of AI explosion. And the revised ISO 18587 will specifically address the use of AI and MT engines and how to manage client expectations. But here's the part that's uncomfortable to discuss, right? Is that compliance is voluntary. And in an industry like ours, racing to cut costs and speed up delivery, some providers are quietly running content through engines, MT or AI or whatever model they're using, doing a pinch of cleanup, maybe even some AI assisted quality estimation, and they're delivering it as human translation at human translation rates or close to human translation rates. So then when they compete against agencies that are transparent, they just look that much better. And here's what I'm going to tell you. That is not innovation. That's deception. It's lying. And there's no place for it in our industry. And it gives the rest of us who are doing the right thing a bad name. And again, people will tell you, oh, Peter, you're being AI resistant here. No, I'm not. If a client wants to use AI in their workflow, it can be done. It can be provided, right? It goes right back to the thesis of this whole thing. If you're using AI in your workflow and you're not transparent about it, and you can't explain why you're using it, what problem it solves, what your quality controls look like, you've got a real problem. I mean, if you cannot do those things, that's a weakness, right? I mean, clients...
You tell that person to stay home on audit day.
Exactly. I mean, in my mind, clients respect it, right? It's like, if you're helping them understand, there's a whole reason why we have this podcast, and most certainly this episode, is to let people look behind the curtain. I think today more than ever, Patrick, what we're trying to do is to help people understand how this business works, how this industry works, so they can be better buyers. And what clients aren't going to respect is that after the fact that you say, hey, this is human translation, and they paid a premium for it, and it was actually MT with a quick once over. I mean,
that bridge is burned.
That bridge is burned. You know how hard it is to get new clients, how hard it is to, for people to gain that rapport and that trust. And if you can't tell your client how you produce their translation, you probably shouldn't be producing it that way. My mother always used to say, if you can't do something in the light of the sun, then you probably shouldn't do it. Right. That was kind of the saying. So I don't know. I'm done. I'm done with that soapbox, I guess, Patrick.
No, but I think that's fair. Like, I think our advice to buyers is to, like, we want to arm you with the questions to make sure you're getting the information that you need. So I think, like, some questions that come to mind for me is like, one, are you using AI? And then 1A is, how are you using AI, and what problem does it solve for me as the buyer? Like, what's my benefit of you using AI? Is a great way to maybe weed out some providers that may not have a great answer to that. But again, I mean, thinking back even 10 years ago at this point, like, our proposals were very detailed. It's like, if we say translation, it means this. If we say editing, it means this. If we say proofreading, it means this. And we would list out every step that project would take. And some of them, more the complex projects, were, a page and a half worth of like, here's exactly what we're going to do when we do this project. And it might seem like overkill, but like, the process to build those proposals was automated. So like, it didn't take us a ton of time to do that. But I think a lot of our clients respect that. They're like, oh, I actually know what's happening when I send this to the provider. It's not just like, hey, half a page quote and it's going to cost you this much, and that's it.
100%, Patrick, right? That's been our credo from the beginning here. And I mean, it dovetails perfectly into our next segment, which is just some advice, right? So if you're a buyer of language services and your vendor leads with AI, like that's where they basically put all their chips before they've asked you any questions, talked about your workflows and your volumes and how you use translation and who your audience is and what your quality expectations are and what are your pain points. I mean, that's a red flag. And it really, in general, if they're not asking you those questions, that's a red flag. A good partner is going to ask a lot of questions before they demo tools, right?
They might also, I mean, a good seller too might ask you some uncomfortable questions, like not necessarily to put you on the spot, but maybe more so to uncover those things you may not have been thinking of. Again, I think if you have a provider that's not asking you questions, that's, again, a red flag of like, I don't think anyone has ever gone into a discovery call where the prospect talks the whole time and the agency's like, great, we know exactly what to do. We'll see you soon with a proposal. It's like, no, we're going to have so many questions along the way.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I would ask the question when you're interviewing LSPs, or the folks from Slater now say LSIs, language solution integrators. Are you using machine translation or AI in any part of your workflow? And if the answer is yes, that's okay. That's not a problem. The problem is if they can't answer, or worse, if they won't. And I get that as a language service provider, sometimes the behind the scenes is a little bit boring. Some people don't want to understand that. Well, that's a different, case entirely. It doesn't mean you shouldn't disclose it. But if your client is truly interested and you can't answer those questions because you don't want to, because you're afraid to answer them, if they were to know the truth, it'd be a problem. That's not great. I mean, ask the follow-up, like, what's your quality control process? What standards are you operating under? Do you have any ISO registrations? Do you have post editors reviewing AI output? These are all fair questions, and any reputable provider is going to welcome them. They're going to welcome. When clients are interested and they want to understand how we do what we do,
then we nerd out about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And again, those are great conversations. And for those of us in the industry, this kind of feels like an old ad that I remember seeing. So like, you have to stop leading with the tech stack, right? Like, I think that's all I'm seeing on LinkedIn. Well, this is what we do. And it's like this huge convoluted flow chart, this, that.
How many agents do they have?
Yes, all of that. I mean, lead with the question. The best sales conversation is always going to start with, tell me what's broken. What problem can I solve for you? Not, let me show you our AI workflow. It's amazing. Again,
That's
fun
that's
to
what
geek
demos
out.
are for, not sales conversations.
Right. Once you know the problem, right? And that's a challenge always to our sales team is why are we showing slides when we haven't even had a conversation about what the problem is? What solution are you pitching if you haven't had the
You're just
discovery
guessing.
call? Yeah, I mean, people love their slides, right? So anyway, be transparent about how you produce your work, not because somebody's forcing you to do it, because it's the right thing to do, and it builds trust that lasts longer than any tech cycle. And I will tell you this is a cycle. I'm not saying AI isn't here to stay, right? I mean, there were people that said cat tools weren't going to survive. Well, they're still here. And now people are saying cat tools won't survive because AI is going to replace them. Well, I've got news. Some form of translation memory or a database where approved translation sits is going to be with us for a very long time. And I would tell people, stop chasing the hype. It sounds amazing. Your clients don't really care about your AI unless it solves their problem. So
No,
talk
I mean,
about
think
outcomes.
about it.
It's always
I mean,
outcomes.
Think about it too. Like, yes, typewriters are no longer here, but people still type infinitely more on computers now. And newspapers aren't here now, but there's infinitely many more web pages. Like the core of the initial invention is still there. It's changed and it's shifted, but like it still does basically the same thing.
Absolutely. I just held up my typewriter. It's just a very tiny, thin keyboard, and
it's not as loud.
It's not as loud, though. Ari uses a mechanical keyboard, and he really enjoys the click.
I'm sure there's some AI where after you hit a certain character limit, your computer can go ka-ching, as if it was resetting it.
That would be amazing. I want the carriage return sound. I want that back. All right, so Patrick, our close. The IBM ads, I think it was a great place to start. And the reason those commercials are so effective is because everybody has that anxiety, right? It's like, and they give people permission to stop feeling like they're behind. It's like, hey, everybody's got this problem. The world is telling us we need to use AI right now. Go do it right now. I don't care how you do it. Go do it. And you're not behind because you haven't adopted the latest AI tool. You're behind if you haven't identified the problems that your clients and your team are facing, right? So fix the problem. If AI helps, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Just be transparent about all the tools you use and hold yourself and your vendors to a standard. And for the love of God, stop talking to your friends about AI. Go back to bourbon. It's a lot more fun to talk about that.
Yeah, for me, it takes me back to the Jurassic Park question of when Goldblum says, your scientists were so preoccupied on whether or not they didn't think if they should, which I think is a very, very applicable quote to this situation as well.
Oh,
it's like, I mean, you could do all of this, but like, should you? Is it going to be helpful? Is it going to save you time? Is it going to save you money? And again, I think we're maybe, I think the market in general is a little bit over the sizzle of AI, and they want to see the steak. They're like, hey, you can hype it up as much as you want, but like, how is this actually going to help me? And I think we're getting to that. The tides are shifting from like sexy, like crazy demos, like, oh, I can, do speech translation on the spot with AI. It's like, maybe. But it's like, okay, let's get into like real helpful use cases, not some big aspirational idea to like change the world.
Yeah, I like that, Patrick. Again, how many times have we said, sometimes you need a ball peen hammer and not a backhoe, right? I mean, it's the right solution for the right problem. And that is an age-old adage, but it's today more true than ever, I think. So this was fun. This was a fun episode, and I think we went a little longer than we usually do. So thank you so much for hanging out, everyone. And for this episode of Translation Confidential, this is Patrick and Peter signing off.